When I was 17 throwing 86 and committed to a D1 school, I literally thought I had it all figured out. But a few months later, the same school that offered me a scholarship called me and told me to decommit. I dropped 4 miles per hour because I was chasing mechanics, plyos, and all of the modern pitching junk that everybody says you need. And honestly, that moment changed my life because it sent me down a 5-year journey to find what actually works. And that's the story that I'm here to tell you today. Okay, middle school was where pretty much all of this started because at this time, baseball started to become my life. I would come home from school, drop my book bag, and go outside until it was dark and either throw or play wall ball or do whatever I could that involved throwing. It could have been a baseball, football, whatever. I didn't lift, I didn't have a plan, I would long toss with whoever, and I just loved throwing. And I used to study big leaguers. One of my favorite ones at this time was Clayton Kershaw. And I would literally try to copy his delivery, and that didn't really work. But in 8th grade, I was throwing 73 to 75 miles per hour, which at that time I didn't realize was pretty good for that age. I didn't really care. I just knew that throwing felt fun. And I didn't realize it then, but that's kind of when pitching started to become my identity. And then high school hit, and that's kind of where things started to get real for me. All right, so freshman year of high school, I got pretty serious about pitching. I had tried out for an elite travel team in my area, and I made it. This is kind of when I got my first taste of serious baseball training. And then this is also when I realized okay, I could probably take this pitching thing pretty far. But that's also when things got confusing. Everyone had advice. Coaches, parents, trainers, and I was getting pulled in so many different directions. And for a kid who was a freshman in high school at 15 years old, that was really confusing. But either way, I started training, lifting for the first time, and kind of just doing everything I could. Freshman year, I was throwing about 75 to 78 miles per hour. And then sophomore year, I grew a little bit. I started throwing 79 to 82, touching 83. And by the end of that year, I was touching 84 at 130 pounds soaking wet. I was pitching well enough sophomore year to where I got the opening day nod for my varsity team. And that was a really big deal because I played at a Group 4 school, which in New Jersey means you just play with the biggest schools. That's usually where the best talent was. So for a sophomore to get that opening day call, it was a pretty big deal for me. And it was about that time when I started getting interest from colleges. For the first time ever, I really started to feel the confidence that okay, I can definitely play at the college level. But if freshman and sophomore year is when I felt like everything started to click, junior and senior year is where things kind of fall apart. So junior year, I came in pretty hot. I was one of the top arms on my varsity team. I went to a Charleston Southern camp that fall, shoved, hit 86 at 140 pounds, and thought I was on top of the world. They offered me a scholarship a couple months later, and I ended up committing. And I finally felt like I made it. But it was at that time where things really started to take a turn for the worst. I started diving into mechanics. I bought my first set of plyo balls. I started watching video after video and just tinkering, with my arm slot, my leg kick, where my hands were in my delivery, everything that you can think of, I tried to change. And what I realize now is I was fixing things that were never broken. I was just trying to make myself too perfect. And that's going to be a common theme that you see throughout my journey. And listen, I'm not saying that plyo balls are the devil and you're going to blow your arm out, but when I was doing them, there was no rhyme or reason why. And most of you watching this, it's probably the same thing. But regardless, I went from smooth and athletic to stiff and robotic. And I'll never forget this. A few months after committing, Charleston Southern came to watch me pitch. I was 79 to 82, 4 miles per hour down from the last time they saw me. And a few days later, I got a phone call from the head coach. They pulled my offer and they told me to decommit. And honestly, I don't blame them. I was not the same guy that they recruited initially. That one phone call, as you can imagine, really sucked and it honestly crushed me. And me and my family, we weren't super familiar with the recruiting process because CSU was the first school that I offered. The first school I got an offer from. So We honestly didn't know where to turn at that point. But while that phone call crushed me, it also lit something inside of me. I could have quit right there, but I decided I wasn't going to let that define my story. So after that happened, I was working with a strength coach a little bit. I lifted, I got my weight up a little bit senior year, and by that time I was hitting 87. So I'd regained my velo and was able to add about a mile per hour. This got me some new college looks, and I ended up committing to Mercer County College. I was really proud of myself, and I felt like I had clawed my way back from a dark spot. But what I didn't realize is that college baseball was about to hit me like a truck. Okay, so freshman year at Mercer started great. I had cracked the starting rotation early. I was 84 to 87, and I had finally started to feel like myself again, loose and athletic. But the college season is really long, and because I was still about 145 pounds at this time, I didn't have a lot of muscle. The length of the college season really caught up with me. And by the end of the year, my body was burnt out and I was throwing in the low 80s again. And remember how I said I had cracked the starting rotation early in the season? By this time, I was kind of getting shelled and I didn't even pitch in our playoff run. That one hurt. So I remember in my exit meeting that year, my head coach was telling me, I've got the stuff, I've got the talent, but I just needed to get bigger. So that summer going into my sophomore year, I made it my mission to gain weight. Sophomore year, I came back to campus at around 165 pounds, 15 pounds heavier, and I started seeing those upper 80s way more consistently. And then COVID hit, and my season was gone. But honestly, COVID was a huge blessing for me, just from a baseball standpoint. Obviously, COVID was a tragic time, but I went all in. I lifted pretty much every day. I threw pretty much every day. I gained more weight. I got up to 170, and I decided to go back to Mercer since I had been granted an extra year of eligibility. And I showed up there a completely different animal, bigger, faster, stronger, and that fall I was 86 to 89. Had a great scout day, and suddenly Division I schools were calling me. Felt like I was right there. But here's where the story repeats. I started chasing again, searching for the magic fix, YouTube drills, mechanical analysis, random coaches telling me what I was doing wrong. I came back from winter break that year throwing worse. I was stuck in the 83 to 85 range, tight, mechanical, frustrated. I was trying so hard to be perfect that I forgot how to be athletic. And my spring season showed it. I had a 4+ ERA, I was getting hit around, and I was losing confidence. All of the D1 schools that called me in the fall completely disappeared, and rightfully so. I was not the same pitcher. I managed to salvage a decent end to the season, and I still had some interest, so I decided to transfer to Rowan University, one of the top Division III schools in the country. And I was hoping for a fresh start. And at first it helped. My velo went up a little bit, and my first fall at Rowan, I was throwing about 82 to 86 and touched 87 a few times. I pitched pretty solid that fall, and I earned a bullpen role. But then, as history repeats itself, I fell into the same trap. I thought, if I just bulk to 190, then I'll throw harder. So I dirty bulked 20 pounds in 2 months, lifted like a bodybuilder, and guess what? I came back tight, slow, and unathletic. My velocity did not move. I still pitched okay early on in the spring, but I couldn't sustain it. I was chasing fixes again, overthinking, and by mid-season, I had lost my spot. And honestly, that was probably my lowest point as a baseball player, because deep down, I still wanted pro ball. I just couldn't figure out how to unlock what I knew was inside of me. So I made myself one promise. Before I quit, give it one last run. So I took a gap year and I went all in chasing 90. Trained at a couple different facilities, did everything I could, and I did get up to touching 90 here and there. But obviously that still wasn't enough to crack into pro ball. I was 24 and honestly I just felt like I missed my window. So I started coaching. At first, it was just in-person lessons, but at the facility I worked at, I kept throwing on the side for fun. Not to chase anything, literally just for fun. Believe it or not, that's when everything changed. I wasn't overthinking, I wasn't cueing myself to death, I was just throwing. And all of a sudden, the velocity started to climb up. I started hitting 90 pretty consistently. And then one day, it honestly just hit me. All the things I was chasing before, the drills, the mechanics, the cues, those were the exact things holding me back. And that's when I started to connect the dots and realize that's what I wanted to help other pitchers figure out. And that's exactly what led to everything I'm doing now. Now, as a 26-year-old, being 3 years removed from my playing days, I throw harder than ever, but more importantly, I've built something out of all the lessons that I learned. I started my own remote training company, EC Pitching, and built the athletic mechanics formula. Everything that I wish I knew when I was chasing velocity the wrong way. And since then, I've helped hundreds of pitchers do it the right way, without destroying their confidence or overthinking themselves into paralysis. And it all started with that kid in my backyard in middle school who just loved throwing a baseball. So if you're watching this and you're stuck in the same spot that I was, overthinking, second guessing, bouncing from one drill or cue to the next, I've been exactly where you are. I spent 5 years chasing fixes that don't work. 5 years trying to figure it all out on my own. And honestly, I wish I had somebody back then who could have shown me the right path sooner. You don't need to waste all of those years like I did. You don't need to go through that whole cycle of confusion and burnout. That's literally why I built EC Pitching and the athletic mechanics formula, to shortcut everything that I had to learn the hard way. So if you're serious about getting to 90 the right way, click the first link in the description down below and book a call with me. We'll talk about where you're at, what's holding you back, and I'll show you the exact plan of what it looks like to get there faster without wrecking your confidence or your arm in the process. Don't wait 5 years like I did. Let's figure this out now.